Ariel DaEvils Schneller is a monster at the high-stakes cash game tables. He has already booked a yearly profit of more than $1 million online. While many other high-stakes players are jumping over to Pot Limit Omaha, Schneller is steamrolling the Nolan Hold'em tables. We've got Schneller on the phone right now to talk about what it takes to play at the highest level cash games, and we're also going to find out about the altercation of sorts that he had with poker brat Phil Hellmuth at this year's World Series. All right, Ariel, thank you very much for being with us here today.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
So, first off, for those watching who may not know that much about you, could you kind of tell us what you did before poker and how you got started in poker and how you climbed up the ranks?
I didn't really do anything before poker. I just went to school. I graduated from Yale University in 2006 with a degree in philosophy, and I pretty much started playing poker at Yale. Like, we have these residential colleges there, which are like dorms, except for you're in the same one for 4 years, and they kind of, are considered like, pretty insular or whatever. It's kind of like Hogwarts, I guess, Harry Potter, where they all have like their own identity or whatever. But my residential college actually had a Trumbull poker game, and it was a home game, and it started off like pretty small stakes. So I didn't really know much about poker, and I started playing it, and there were a lot of like very good poker players there. At least I thought they were very good at the time. I'm sure these days I might not be so charitable towards them, but they were all like very smart guys, and played poker pretty well, and I was pretty bad, so I kind of like lost a ton of money, and I was getting my ass kicked, and decided it was time to figure out how to play poker. So kind of picked the brains of some of the people in the game, like Alex Jacob, the well-renowned tournament player, was in the game, and he and I were in the same year, so we kind of talked a lot of poker, and a couple other guys who ended up being pro poker players for a bit of time. So there was that, and then the sophomore year, summer, I didn't get an internship. All my friends at Yale were like, working on Capitol Hill or interning in investment banks or something like that. I was lazy and didn't really find a job, so I commuted to Foxwoods every day from New Haven, and I would kind of drive for an hour, up to New Haven, and then play poker for like 30, 40 hours straight, drive back home deliriously, pass out for 12 hours, and then, just do the same thing every day for a few months, and, grind it out a bankroll, and, that was pretty much the start of my story. There were a lot of ups and downs, obviously, but that's how I got into poker.
So your story very much started out playing live poker as opposed to online poker. How did you get into online poker then?
Well, I played a bit of online poker the summer after my freshman year, where Al would transfer me like $400, and I would bust it on Paradise Poker at the 2-4 game, and kind of I shied away from online poker for a while, but then the summer after my junior year, I got an internship at a defense consulting firm that my brother worked for, and I didn't really have that much time to play live poker, and I started playing a lot of online, grinding out sit-and-goes, and once I got like a $20,000 bankroll, I jumped up to 10-20 no limit because as a college student, I didn't know anything about bankroll management. So I took like a 10-buy shot and ran pretty well, and then started playing a bunch of online poker because I took my studies at Yale pretty seriously. Like, I didn't really work that hard, but I still didn't want to, like, be negligent or, derelict in my responsibilities. So I was in school a bunch of the time. It's not so easy to make, trips to Foxwoods while you're trying to keep up with your work and having a social life. So online poker kind of, was ideal for that situation.
Right. Well, and you talked about taking shots and actually having it work out well, and you hear a lot of that from some really high-stakes online players, or really high-stakes players, period, how they took a shot at least once or twice. Do you think, that obviously goes against bankroll management to a certain extent, but do you think that taking shots may actually play an integral role in rising up the ranks?
No, actually, I think that, I should have taken fewer shots because I was pretty much broke on and off for a good 2 straight years, where I just didn't know anything about bankroll management. I would play in Foxwoods every day with my whole bankroll on the table, go busto, like crush my home game at college and make a couple grand, take it to a 5-5 game and bust it again, stuff like that. So I actually think that my shot taking for a long time was a really bad idea because not only was I broke, which means like you don't have any money, but there was also the opportunity cost of, not moving up and playing, like higher and higher stakes. So while my friends like practice good bankroll management, were like, building the bankroll to play 10-20 no limit and all that, I was sitting there like grinding like 2-4 no limit on a stake from a friend and stuff like that. So I actually don't think the shot taking was particularly beneficial for my career. I do think that once you've had a good amount of success and you can afford to take a big hit, that shot taking in the right spots is probably a really good idea, because if there's a difference between having like a $30,000 bankroll and losing half of your bankroll, where you have to like grind 2-4, maybe 3-6, and you're not really making that much money. You don't have like financial comfort or anything like that. But if you have like a $2 million bankroll and you lose like 500,000, 600,000, 700,000, it really sucks, and that's money that you would prefer to have, but you've still got the bankroll and financial comfort to like play high enough stakes that you're still going to make a huge hourly win rate and not really ever risk going broke. So shot taking, once you kind of have that pad where you like can play high stakes games with only like 20 buy-ins to your name, isn't really that big of a deal because you can afford to take the hits. But the small stakes games, I think that if you don't have like at least maybe like 60 buy-ins for your game, you're probably doing something wrong.
Okay. Well, and you kind of rose up the ranks relatively quickly, at least considering from the viewpoint of a lot of the people that are watching this who have probably been playing poker at least as long as you have, and they're still pretty much at the same place. So what advice could you maybe give to some players to kickstart their jump up the ladder?
Oh, that's a tough one. I mean, like, I feel like I, definitely put in a ton of time and work into kind of grinding 5-10 and 10-20, and for a good year or so, every time, I would crush 10-20 and make like, $100,000, $150,000, and I would be like, all right, I'm going to take some shots at 50, 100. Like, I played Steve's bets heads up, who's like, was considered a pretty big spot at the time. I don't know if he's gone better, but at the time he was considered like really bad, and he took me for like $60K, and then I nursed my wounds at 5-10, 10-20, and made a ton of money, and would play these like terrible fish or like Take Poker and sites like that, and just constantly got crushed every time I moved up. So it's really one of those things where I put in my dues at 5-10 and 10-20 and just grinded a bunch, and then in March there was this guy Yassarian 20 who was beating all of the best players in the world at 100, 200 and making a fortune, and everyone thought he might be cheating, so they wouldn't play him. And I took a shot against him, and I sold off a decent amount of action, but I still took him for 160,000 and had a good piece of that. And then the next day, I had confidence from that, and I took an even bigger piece at 50, 100, and 100, 200. And I ran pretty well, and since then I've just been on like a 4-month heater where like I can't really lose. So I guess I would say that, to all the players that really want to move up, just grind 5-10, 10-20, and don't just view it as like the money you're making, but view it as, buying yourself a chance to take a shot at some high stakes games and some, profitable situations. And if you lose, that you can go back to 5-10, 10-20 and make some more money, and, just like keep persevering, and hopefully it'll be your first time, but, eventually you're bound to win at these high stakes and then really start accumulating wealth pretty quickly.
Okay. Well, was there a turning point in your poker career? Was there either like a big score that you made or something that kind of clicked mentally that kind of got you started?
There were a few. Like the summer after my junior year, I had maybe a $30,000 bankroll, and I went to Atlantic City for 4th of July weekend when I was in D.C. for the summer, and there was this 10 and a quarter game with a 5,000 max buy-in, and I was playing 5-10, and somebody was like, holy crap, there he is, and like immediately picked up and ran to the 10 and a quarter game. So I didn't know what was going on, but I locked up a seat, and I ended up having the seat on the right of this total fish. I mean, he knew he was awful, but he makes like had made hundreds of millions of dollars off the .com boom, and just was like, one of those, any amount of money I lose in poker is less than I would lose playing blackjack, so I like playing here. And he like played every hand except for one for like 8 hours. Like when he folded 4 hours in, nobody could even figure out what the hell it could have been, because he was shown down like deuce 7 offsuit at one point, So like there was a hand where I like re-raised second to act, and he cold called with jack deuce, and I had jacks. the board was like deuce 4-6 jack, and I got it in. And then when I realized like he doesn't fold pre-flop at all, it got folded to me in the small, and I had aces. I like open race to 800, and he called, and the flop came down like jack high, and I bet 1,000, then 2,000, then 2,000. He like called me down, and I won. You know, just like some ridiculous stuff, and he kept on having like a huge stack because he would make trips against everybody else. So like he kept feeding me money basically, and I made like $26,000 in like 8 hours, or 24,000. And then like, you know, I got back to Atlantic City, or from Atlantic City to DC, and I was staying with my brother, and I wasn't supposed to be back in town till like Monday, and it was Sunday morning, and you know, my brother knew at this point I'd gone broke a lot of times, so he sees me like home a day early, looking exhausted, knocking on the door. And he's just like, "Don't tell me you lost all your money again." And I was just like, "No, man. I made $24,000, and I took a limo back home." And I pointed to like a stretch limo doing a 3-point turn at the like T intersection at the end of his street. And he was just like, "Man, I hate you." You know, he was so jealous. And as I was like about to pass out from exhaustion, I go to like charge my cell phone, and I reach in my pocket, find like another 1K chip, and I was like, "Guess I made 25,000." You know, and like passed out for a day. So that was definitely like the biggest session for me because I almost doubled my bankroll. But you know, there have been a lot of turning points in terms of kind of learning about poker in general. There have been some, you know, moments where I've realized like stuff that I'm doing wrong. Like I remember one time, like, you know, CTS, the master of educating the fish. He's like one of the best poker players in the world, but he just will not stop telling. He doesn't like berate them in chat, but in like the forums or whatever, he's just more than willing to like give his reads on them. And I was like reading the forums, and there was like a thread about me, and he was like, he just, you know, continuation bets too much. And I was just like, maybe I do. And I looked at my stats, and it was ridiculous. And like, I stopped c-betting as often, you know, and started like showing a lot more profit. And there are other moments like that, but you know, I'd say that, you know, the two most pivotal moments in terms of my poker development as a player would probably be 2 World Series ago and 1 World Series ago, because those were the World Series where I was housemates with Jason Strasser and Falls Victory, respectively. And they were both just at the top of the game when I was housemates with them. I mean, Falls still is, but, you know, just getting to pick their brains and have them watch me play and listening to them talk about poker was really, you know, I've always said the number one thing you can do to get better at poker is to just be around really good poker players and, you know, talk poker with them. And I had kind of a very special and lucky opportunity to do that with some of the best players in the world. And, you know, every time I spent a lot of time with them, shockingly enough, I got way better at poker. So.
Well, considering that you have gotten way better at poker recently and just like over the course of your development, are you still learning anything new about the game at this point?
Not really. I don't want to say that like, you know,
pompously or anything.
Like, oh, he knows everything, because that's definitely not true. But I would say that at this point, like, I'm doing well enough that I'm not quite feeling the need to put in tons and tons of time into, like, you know, studying 4-bet frequencies and, you know, like doing Excel spreadsheets, because I feel like for the most part I'm pretty much, you know, figured out like a good style of play. But, you know, that doesn't mean my style isn't changing. You know, like I'm constantly adjusting to my opponents, because these days I'm playing tons of heads up, and, you know, I'm playing in player pools that are pretty small in the 6-max tables. So I might not be like learning anything per se, like, hey, here's a cool thing that the math proves or something like that, but I am constantly like paying attention to what my opponents are doing and trying to, you know, just the classic like poker cliches, you know, figure out what they think about me and how to utilize that, and, you know, figure out what they've been doing and constantly adjust and stuff like that. So at the really high stakes, I wouldn't say there's that much learning going on. It's just a constant, you know, testing of strategies and, you know, adjustments and back and forth. So.
And like concentrating on how the meta game is changing and stuff like that, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Well, and actually, you mentioned poker cliches. One of my questions actually has to do with a poker cliche of sorts. You hear often people saying that when you have pocket aces, you're either going to win a small pot or lose a big pot. And I would assume that you would think differently because you've won some of your biggest pots with pocket aces, and it's the best starting hand you could possibly have. So when people actually play that way, and actually it seems like that's actually happening to them, that they can't win big pots with aces, they only lose big pots with aces.
Well,
what do you think they're doing
honestly,
wrong?
Like, the people who think that way, I don't want to say that they're, like, idiots, because I'm sure that they're good at some things in life, and, like, there's ways to be kind of dumb at poker, but not, dumb in life. I've definitely played, like, a bunch of people who think that kind of stuff that I respect in non-poker walks of life. But, I mean, come on, just check your poker tracker. Like, aces is every poker player's, like, winningest hand. For a lot of players, it's like, they make money on aces and kings and, like, nothing else, so it's like, all these poker cliches, like, are just subject to kind of, like, analysis, and, just, like, take a look at your poker tracker and see which hands are the winningest. It's going to be aces, and, like, the thing about that saying is that, for one thing, there's just, like, almost no way for it to be true in, 100 big blind, 6 max, or online games, because, like, just by virtue of how much re-raising there is, like, when you get aces, if you see a flop, unless, like, someone just calls you, like, if you've re-raised, like, you're playing a big pot and you normally got the best of it, and, it's just very easy to get it all in pre-flop, online, just because it's only 100 big blinds, and, the games are so aggressive that, like, getting, like, ace-queen against aces is sometimes a cooler these days. So, I mean, that's one thing about the saying. I don't know. Also, like, I've always thought about that adage that it's, like, a bit stupid, because it just ignores the possibility they just win a lot of medium-sized pots, like, if you're playing live, it's possible that with, like, 500 big blinds, if you're playing a big pot with aces, unless you have a set, you're not going to have the best of it, because people just don't get it all in, for tons and tons of money with just one pair, which is all that aces beats, if it doesn't have a set. So there's that, but, if you're playing like 1,000 big blind pot with, pocket aces unimproved against most competent players, you're going to be getting the worst of it. But, what about all the medium-sized pots where a guy just calls you down with flop top pair, and you clearly have the best of it and you never get raised? It's like aces is the king of the medium-sized pots. When you say, like, win a small pot or lose a big one, it's kind of, the neglected alternative, which is, like, just completely crushing people in medium-sized pots. I'd also say that the players who think that way probably aren't playing aggressively enough in the first place, where, the reason why they can't win big pots with aces is because if they re-raise, like, the guy knows they have aces, and he doesn't just, like, stack off with top pair after calling us, like, Jack 10 suited and stuff like that. So it's like, yeah, if you're, like, completely incapable of, like, huge moves and you're putting a ton of money with aces, guys are going to, generally fold worse than aces most of the time. But, if you're playing, like, even close to correct and just very aggressively, then, you should be winning a ton of money with aces, because people just won't believe you and will, like, look you up with bluff catchers a ton of the time.
Right. So, kind of to sum it up then, the people that are only winning small pots with aces, it's probably because they aren't planting the seeds of doubt ahead of time by playing more aggressively with their lesser hands. And
and it's also because a lot of times they're like, I play a lot of live, and you just see players, like, miss out on, like, clear value bets or value raises because they want to play pot control, even though they're missing value, where, like, if a guy, like, check raises you and bets into you and you have aces, and then he, like, checks the river. I see a lot of live players just, like, check back because they're, like, scared, even though there's no way a better hand would check the river. They just don't want to get, like, check raised, or the pot's already really big, and they don't want to, like, make a big bet for value and get called by, like, middle two pair or something like that. So really that's kind of like, I guess the whole saying is just linked to a mentality that's needlessly risk averse, and, not really, the type of people who think that just don't really know how to play poker.
Okay. Well, the final question that I've got is that you recently kind of got into a dust-up with Phil Hellmuth. What kind of happened between you two?
I mean, I was at a World Series event with them. I think it was the Mixed Hold'em event. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was. And he's just so insufferable. I mean, like, it's really just totally unacceptable to behave at a table the way he does. I've spent a lot of time in casinos, and he's just definitely one of the most unprofessional pro poker players I've ever seen. And he behaves in a way that, if anybody else tried getting away with it, people would just talk about what an they are, but somehow because Phil Hellmuth, like, crushed a bunch of tournaments back in the 80s and, 90s or whatever, like, he's owed some deference, and I'm always like very polite at the poker table unless you like either talk trash to me, slow roll me, or like accuse me of cheating or slow rolling or something along those lines. So, I do have a bit of a temper when somebody comes after me, and like Phil was on my left and was just constantly talking about, oh, you're one of those aggressive kids, huh? I've seen 1,000 just like you, blah, blah, blah. And then he started talking about, like, how bad all the internet players are. So, Good to See You was at my table, and I was just kind of, like, going off on, Phil for what an idiot he is and how stupid he plays, because he was just, like, sitting there nursing, like, a short stack and, like, bragging about his patience, and I was just, like, making fun of him because by the time he doubles up from being patient, he'd be, like, right back where he started, And it definitely got a bit heated where, he started talking, like, about Dur and how bad Dur is. Or, like, Good to See You was just like, so when are you going to play Dur? He's just like, I have better things to do than play Dur, but if I ever wanted to, I'd take his money. And I was just like, you do not have better things to do than play Dur. I mean, and he was just like, what? And I was just like, you sit around all day, every day in the summer, playing these, like, $1,500 buy-in tournaments where your hourly rate is like $40 an hour, so you can get another bracelet. So everyone will think you're like great at poker when you just play more tournaments than anybody else. You're trying to tell me that you have something better to do than like play a guy that you think sucks at poker for $100,000? I mean, come on, really? And he just like kept on, deflecting the issue and still managing to talk trash. And I was just like, he's just like, you internet kids show up and you think you know everything about poker. And it's just hysterical. It's just hysterical. You have no clue. And I was just like, the only thing more hysterical than that, Phil, is that all this internet players show up to these live casinos and all the live players talk because they feel threatened. And then every time we challenge you to play $100,000 freeze-outs, you back off and start saying you have better things to do. So, put your money where your mouth is. Like, play one of us heads up sometimes, but stop talking I'm not going to back it up. And it's funny because Andy Block was at the table, and he was just kind of like laughing and nodding in agreement with everything like Good to See You and I were saying. But it's just like one of those things where this guy's got like the most ridiculous ego in the world, and he's just really bad at poker, and it's just infuriating because he thinks he's like entitled to just run his mouth constantly. And I'm just not going to sit there getting berated and mocked and belittled, say nothing because this guy's like supposedly a legend, especially not if I can get a heads-up match out of it. But, I mean, Phil knew it was good for him and didn't really take me up on it.
So you were speaking up for the little guy.
So what?
I said, so you were speaking up for the little guy.
Exactly. For all the people that have to deal with Phil Hellman, will make a stand.
Well, on that note, that's the end of the interview. I really appreciate you doing this interview with us.
No problem. Thanks a lot.
And thank you guys for watching The Online Zone on Card Player TV.